Okay, so I think I was instructed to start at 9:01, even though the spotlight is apparently on me. It's very intimidating. Okay, so it is 9:01. Welcome everybody to the UCCS Academic Showcase. We do this every term, and it's one of the highlights. Obviously, it's the end of the term, and it's kind of a celebration of work accomplished. I don't have much to say except to congratulate the students on getting to this point. It's taken a huge investment of time and effort, and we hope that you found it worthwhile. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank the internship hosts, both those who were able to be present for these presentations and those who aren't here, for the help that they've extended to our program and to our students, and of course to the UCCS staff for making all this possible. So with that, why don't we get started with the presentations?
All right, fantastic. Thank you, Dr. Kravitz. And so in regards to today's format, so students will go ahead and present. They will go ahead and share their screen and then do their presentation. And then they will have, basically we'll field one question from the internship host site, and then it'll be the next student and then their question fielded from the internship host site. At the end, we'll have open Q&A, time permitting. And so our first student is Lexie Smith.
Hi, let me share my screen. Alrighty, well, hi, my name is Lexie Smith, and I'm going to be talking about the flaws that exist within the police institution, focusing on mental health practices and police brutality. In a 12-day police training, there's no focus on the mental disorders that are likely to come with this job. Some of these disorders include PTSD, depression, substance use disorder, and suicide or suicide ideation. On a separate note, people of color are 3 times more likely to be killed by police officers than white people, and are 1.3 times more likely to be unarmed in these actions. With this association, we can see that there's a clear need for change in this institution. My hypothesis suggests that a heavier emphasis on mental health practices and police training will reduce the rates of police brutality, further reducing these brutality rates in people of color. In the first figure, we can see that over half of the officers observed expressed that they either strongly agreed or agreed that their job had made them develop thicker skin. In the second figure, we can see that Black officers felt that a change is needed in the system at higher rates than that of white officers. A study shows that training on mental health topics for police officers could be beneficial in varying skill sets. My survey of 164 adults in California asked demographic and opinion-based questions. I specifically focused on how race had an effect on these responses. In figure 3, we can see one of these questions firsthand. It shows that Black or African American individuals felt that people of color are either a lot more likely or more likely to experience police brutality than that of white people. They were the only race that only answered within the first 2 options of this question. What we can conclude from all of this research is that there is limited data on the connection between mental health practices reducing police brutality. Yet, with the previous study that suggests that mental health training might be beneficial, and as my survey shows, that public concerns with this issue, specifically focusing on Black or African American concerns with this issue, we can conclude that more research needs to be done to see if this is a possibility in fixing the major flaw within this police institution. Thank you.
All right. Fantastic. And so great job, Lexie. And so Lexie interned with the Office of California State Governor Gavin Newsom's office. And if there is someone from the office that want to go ahead and ask her a question, if you can go ahead and raise your hand, then we'll go ahead and call on you. And then if not, then someone from the academic team, if you want to go ahead and ask your question then.
Hi,
Well,
Lexie. How you?
okay, Jordan, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. How you doing? I was just wondering, in terms of the type of training in terms of mental health or something like that. Do you know of like what the other types out there? Are there other like occupations that have these type of things? Like, what do you have any idea what that would look like?
Yeah, so that's kind of why I say in my conclusion that there's limited data that can really conclude that this will be conducive to training and reducing police brutality. But in the first study that I mentioned, it studies knowledge, skills, perspective taking, and sees whether that would increase due to training, and it shows that it could potentially. But that's really the only data I was able to find. I'm sure there's more out there, but from my knowledge, it's very limited, but I think it's an interesting topic and could be an interesting thing to see if it does reduce police brutality.
Great, thank you. All right, so our next student is Saloni Wozniak.
Hello. Can you guys see that okay?
Yeah, it looks good. I think you know, yeah, hit the play. There we go. That's perfect. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Saloni Wozniak. I'm a fourth-year politics and legal studies student at UC Santa Cruz, and I'm here to present my research project titled The Gentrification of the Legalization of Marijuana. So although historically marijuana has been a key driver in mass incarceration for Black and Latinx individuals, the legalization of marijuana in recent years has been a major advancement in correcting the many damages of the war on drugs. However, with 81% of marijuana business owners and founders being white, it's difficult to evaluate if legalization has in any way improved the racial disparities created by prohibition or corrected the disproportionate damages of the war on drugs on communities of color. So in my project, I sought to analyze the impact of legalization on the racial disparities in marijuana-related arrests. I hypothesized that the legalization of marijuana would lead to an overall reduction of marijuana-related arrests, as well as a reduction in the racial disparities of marijuana-related arrests. So I conducted a small comparative sample study of 11 states with legalized recreational marijuana in the District of Columbia, and I compared the trends of marijuana-related arrests for Black and white individuals from 2010 to 2018. And what I ended up finding was mixed support for both of my hypotheses. So although in many states, including California and Nevada, there is a decrease in overall arrests for marijuana-related offenses, as well as a decrease in the racial disparities of marijuana-related arrests, in District of Columbia, there is an increase in overall arrests, as well as an increase in the racial disparities of arrests. So through my analyses, it's clear that moving forward, legalization will require a racial justice approach. With the Black Lives Matter movement bringing mass awareness to racialized policing in America, police reform will be a key factor in reducing the racial disparities of marijuana-related arrests, as well as the employment of various equity measures to ensure that the disproportionate damages of the war on drugs don't continue to harm and bar communities of color in the legalized recreational marijuana market. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Saloni. That was great. And now you intern with the Office of California State Governor Gavin Newsom's office. And so if there's anyone from the office that would go ahead and like to ask a question, if you can go ahead and raise your hand, and Sandra Wilson will go ahead and unmute you so you can go ahead and ask your question. All right, and if there isn't someone from the office that has a question to ask, and then we open it up to our academic team.
Sure, I have a question for you, Saloni. So, right, you're analyzing, right, the arrest rates and kind of changes these laws. Right, there's also, many people who are already in prison when these laws kind of changed in the first place. And so, what are your thoughts on that? I know some states have started to try to move some, people out of the prison for those type of things. I was just wondering if you had any thoughts on that.
Yeah, so many states have sought to restructure their sentencing for marijuana-related offenses, especially California, after legalization, but it has not really been a substantial impact yet. I think there's a long way to go as far as the imprisonment of communities of color for marijuana-related offenses. And again, with policing reform and law policy reform, drug policy reform, I think all of these factors will lead to improvements in that as well.
Oh, thank you.
Great, thank you, Saloni. I appreciate it. All right, our next student is Trisha Media.
Can y'all see that all right?
Yeah, that looks perfect. Great. Thank you, Trisha.
Okay. Good morning. My name is Trisha Media. I'm a fourth year at UC Davis, and today I will be talking about the intersectionality within environmentalism. So historically, low-income communities of color have disproportionately been subjected to economic, health, and environmental burdens. With COVID-19, these DACs are experiencing higher death rates from the virus. CDC recommends to wash your hands frequently in order to reduce the spread of the virus, but how can you do that? How can you and your community do that without the access to clean water? Today, I will ask if access to plumbing facilities has an effect on the number of COVID-19 cases within disadvantaged communities in the Central Valley region. I chose the Central Valley due to its history of drought, water access issues, and high concentration of disadvantaged communities, as you can see in that map to the left. The more red or orange it is, the more disadvantaged those areas are. And through my findings, 5 out of the 6 counties that I analyzed, the COVID-19 rates increase as the lack of access to complete plumbing facilities increased. The only one county that decreased while the lack of access to plumbing facilities increased was Mariposa County, and that was the only county out of the 6 that did not have any census tracts that were considered disadvantaged. So through that analysis, it is proven that disadvantaged communities suffer more of these burdens that have historically been placed. In order to counteract those burdens, there needs to be more funding set aside specifically for disadvantaged communities. And there needs to be more data collection within these communities and other vulnerable communities so that proper analyses of their issues are done and that proper definitions are placed so that funding is provided to the communities in need. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Trisha. And this term, Trisha interned with the California Governor's Office of Planning and Research. And if there's anyone from the office that has a question for her, if you want to go ahead and raise your hand, and Sandra Wilson, our office, will go ahead and unmute you.
Great. Email address from CSUS. If you can please introduce yourself and ask your question.
Hi, my name is Sarah, and I'm an executive fellow at the California Strategic Growth Council. My question for you, Trisha, is if you've identified specific programs that have been created to address this potential issue in the Central Valley?
Yes, one specific program is the Sigma grant program through the Department of Water Resources. There's a section in it where they place more prioritization to disadvantaged communities and other underrepresented communities that may not fall within that definition.
Great, thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Trisha. All right, so our next student is Brandon Dimopodsak. Brandon, if you want to go ahead and share your screen.
Can everyone see that?
Looks great, thank you.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Brianna Cabello, and my project today is Fighting Slave Labor, Valuing Supply Chain Transparency Statements. According to the International Labor Organization, an estimated 16 million individuals were victims of labor trafficking in 2016. In our globalized economy, retailers and manufacturers may inadvertently use suppliers that employ slave labor. In an effort to fight this, in 2010, California passed the California Transparency in Supply Chains Act, which requires retailers and manufacturers with over $100 million in annual global sales to disclose in a public statement made annually their efforts to fight labor trafficking. This leads to my research question: what is the effect of industry type on the quality of a firm's statement complying with this act? In general, retailers or firms with their own retail presence, such as Target and Best Buy, are generally more visible to consumers than non-retailers or firms without their own retail presence, such as Dannon and Lucas Oil. As a result, retailers likely face more pressure to act on issues compared to non-retailers. This leads to my hypothesis that statements from retailers will likely be longer and be of higher quality than statements from non-retailers. To test my hypothesis, I randomly selected 15 retailers and 15 non-retailers and examined the firm's most recent compliance statement available in the Modern Slavery Registry. I counted the number of words in each statement, as well as scored the statement for 54 different indicators in 6 categories. These indicators were determined by experts to be the most essential for a strong corporate anti-trafficking policy. I found that retailer statements were generally longer than non-retailer statements, as figure 3 shows, and that retailer statements scored higher across most categories than non-retailer statements, as figure 2 shows. Overall, my results show that visibility may play a role in higher quality statements. So if we can increase the awareness of this legislation, we can increase the visibility of firms with the most lacking of statements and push them to be more transparent. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Brandon. So this term, Brandon, intern with the California Governor's Office of Emergency Services, Cal-OES. If there's someone from Cal-OES who would like to go ahead and ask a question, if you can go ahead and raise your hand. Otherwise, we will go to the academic team. So, all right.
Brandon, I'm just curious where this is a great project, and it's really impressive how you applied this text analysis technique to a really important social policy question. How did you learn the technique?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the criteria I used to score the statements was actually from an NGO in the UK called the Business and Human Rights Resource Center, because the UK actually has very similar legislation. It's almost nearly identical to the one in California. So I used their criteria to judge the California statements.
Great, thank you so much, Brandon, appreciate it. So our next student is Brianna Cabello.
Can you see it okay?
Yeah, looks great. Thank you, Brendan.
Everyone, my name is Brianna Cabello, and my presentation is titled More Polarization, Less Cooperation, the Most Urgent Problem Facing America Today. America is facing a big problem, and is not healthcare, immigration, or race related. The problem is polarization, which has been plaguing the American government since the 1990s. For my project, I hypothesized that congressional polarization has caused an increase in partisan polarization. Utilizing data from both View.com and the Pew Research Center, I ran a large NK study to test the correlation between the House and the Senate's increase in polarization on partisanship polarization. Both scored a moderate relationship based on their R levels. In terms of how these results affect America, straight ticket voting has been increasing since the 1990s among partisans and is directly tied to polarization. Straight ticket voting threatens the democratic processes because it doesn't matter what the candidates stand for or what they're against, as long as they have the D or their R next to their name, that's good enough for partisan voters. Straight ticket voting also reinforces the idea of the other party being evil or idiotic. However, solving the problem of polarization is not easy. Listening and conversating with those who do not agree with us is one easy way to start finding a middle ground in politics, but this is easier said than done. A complete re-examination of the current structure of the political system may need to be considered in order to solve polarization. For polarization will only get worse and looms larger than any other problem facing America today.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Brendan. And so this term, Brendan interned with the Office of California State Assembly Member Kevin Kiley. And so if anyone from the office wanted to go ahead and ask a question, please raise your hand and Sandra will go ahead and unmute you. Right, otherwise we can go ahead and take a question from the academic team.
Hey, Brendan, how are you doing?
Hey.
Professor Quealy here. I was wondering, so you're talking about this polarization maybe impacts of this. what's driving it? What is, you talk about, starting in the 1990s, we've seen kind of this increased polarization kind of occurring around since that point. What's kind of leading to this? What's kind of happening? Why is this occurring, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's like concrete on why it's like really started to excel in the numbers. I mean, I think one thing, first off, like in the 1990s, the parties purified is like how they call it, and like they really split into two separate ideals and all, they really took separate ideologies and stuff, so that really split people apart. And also I think one big thing is just social media too as well. I think that's an easy one to point to for a lot of increased polarization.
Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Brendan. And so our next student is Jack Hobbs. Jack, if you want to go ahead and share your screen.
Alrighty, here we go.
Great, thank you.
And I think I did the whole thing. 1 second, sorry. There we go. Sorry about that.
No, that's great.
And we see that okay?
It's loading right now. There we go, perfect, thank you.
All right, sorry about that.
No,
my name is Jack Hobbs from the Political Science Department of UC Santa Barbara. I chose to focus on one aspect of the current conversation going on in the United States around policing, and that's campus-based police departments, particularly their effect on student attitudes. So I hypothesize that the size and role of the UCPD would not have an effect on the UC students' attitudes of safety and inclusivity at large, that the marginal changes in the UCPD compared to the very large scale of the UC student body would not result in any major correlation, that the students purely wouldn't notice, and that the only way to garner any correlation would be to isolate variables along lines of race, particularly among compared to BIPOC, that's Black and Indigenous students of color. But when I isolated Black and Indigenous students, I actually found that there was more of a correlation for every increase in the police to student ratio to a decrease in student feelings of safety among white students than among Black students. But when I plugged in the data for the full UC at large, I was able to demonstrate that as the police to student ratio increased, that student feelings of safety decreased with a strong correlation. This demonstrates that I believe there needs to be more research done into this subject to demonstrate a correlation beyond the 8 campuses and 3 biannual data sets that I used across 3 variables. But it demonstrates that there should be a possible reallocation of the $139 million budget of the UCPD. And as we can see with the data on the left of my screen here, there's still a massive disparity among the blue, which is white students, to the green, which is BIPOC students, in feelings of disrespect and then feelings of feeling unsafe. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Jack. And so this term, Jack interned with the Office of California State Assembly member Cotty Petrie Norris's office. And so I already see a hand up from there. And so Sandra, if you want to go ahead and unmute Andrew Medina, that'd be great. Thank you.
Hi, this is Adrian Medina, Legislative Director for Assemblywoman Cotty Petrie Norris, and would like to thank Jack for his work in our office. He played a very key role in securing targeted testing for first responders and healthcare workers in our district. So do appreciate his work. On the presentation, my big question would be, if you were going to reallocate those dollars, what kind of programs would you like to see to improve feelings of campus safety and support?
Sure. So our counseling, student health, and psychological services are all underfunded when compared to the UCPD. And I believe that if we increase the psychological services at any of the UC campuses, we're going to see an increased feeling of safety and inclusivity when compared, rather than spending $139 million on our police department. But I believe more research has to be done to prove that assumption.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Jack. And so our next student is Bethany Bot. So Bethany, if you want to go ahead and start sharing your screen.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can go ahead, we can hear you. And
All right, my name is Bethany Bot, and I'm doing my presentation on the California welfare state, specifically CalWORKS, abbreviated as California Work and Responsibility to Kids, and its relationship to poverty. And so California, despite having the most booming economy among the 50 states, we have consistently averaged higher than the national average of poverty rate among 19%, while still allocating the most welfare and funding to social welfare and anti-poverty programs. So my research question then is, do anti-poverty programs like CalWORKS reduce or increase poverty? And in the case CalWORKS of it, my argument is that it creates it subsidizes bad behavior and financially lackadaisical households. In CalWORKS, the more children a household has, the more poverty-ridden it is. The more children per parent parents there are, the more cash assistance is given to that household in general. And so after analyzing the poverty rates across California counties and taking the counties with the most CalWORKS applications, I then resort to my findings in the relationship of poverty and this social safety net program. So the top poverty-ridden counties in California actually displayed lower numbers of CalWORK applications per capita in the threshold that they held. And in the inverse, the top most counties with the most CalWORK applications, with the exception of LA, given the large population, actually display lower poverty numbers in relation to the overall poverty rate. And in a sense, it's just the inverse finding from my initial hypothesis. I hypothesized that the anti-poverty program like CalWORKS would deepen the poverty rate because it subsidizes lackadaisical behavior and incentivizes people to be lazy in a sense and have more children while still being financially dependent on the government. In a sense, CalWORKS actually lowered the poverty rate by 0.8%, which when taking all the counties and the population in general, it is a lot of people towards the end, probably approximately nearly 80,000 individuals. And that in overall, CalWORKS has done more so to uplift those from poverty rather than especially deep poverty below the 10% of the income bracket than it has to deepen the poverty numbers. So there was no significant relationship in my initial hypothesis, but I was able to find the inverse, refute my initial hypothesis, and further the research in whole.
all right, thank you so much, Bamit. So Bamit, intern with the Office of Sacramento City Council Member Rick Jennings' office. And so, and I see that there's already 2 hands up. And so, Sandra, if you can go ahead and call on folks, that'd be great.
Hey, Dennis, you're unmuted. If you can introduce yourself and then ask your question.
Hi, I'm Dennis Rogers with Councilmember Jennings' office. And Bennett, what I'm curious to know is if you've done any research into how the correlation might be stronger of lifting folks out of poverty if there were greater services to help out the family, such as parenting classes, any sort of vocational or educational training, and if those were coupled into the allocation of CalWORKS benefits as a mandate, what that might do to further lift people out of poverty.
Yes, Dennis, that's a good question. Unfortunately, in the traditional definition of welfare and funding from the government, those type of services will not be classified as welfare as though they should be. But previous research has shown that alternative forms of aid, such as vouchers or food stamps or anything that is away from the monetary value, physical cash, produces more rapid effects for people to adjust their changes and their situations. I would hypothesize that if people were given like vocational training or given more instruction on English learning or those type of classes, there would be drastic changes rather than just giving someone money, because then there is an incentive to learn in that case. Many individuals that do receive social safety net aid in the form of cash relatively take longer time to progress and excel out of poverty. So in that sense, I do believe a policy suggestion should expect more of individuals who are applying for it rather than just grant them money in a sense. So yes, I believe what you're saying should be implemented. Unfortunately, it has yet to be introduced in the California welfare state.
Great, thank you. And I believe we have a second question from Henry. If you'd like to introduce yourself and ask your question.
Yes. My name is Henry Atkinson, also from Councilmember Rick Jennings' office. Ben, under your findings, I'm noticing when you talked about the inverse finding with counties with more applications display lower poverty rates, I notice it says specifically excluding Los Angeles County. Does that apply to your overall finding that CalWORKs lowered the poverty rate by 0.8%? Is that also assuming that we exclude LA County?
Yes, that is, because LA County is very distinctive in the sense that it does have the highest housing costs associated with the state, and that is population per every 10 people is exponentially higher than all the other states. So excluding LA, given that its whole population distribution and its high housing costs, it was the exception and not the rule. For this reason.
Gotcha. Okay. So basically the idea is that LA has the added independent variable of really high housing costs, and so it's probably not actually fair to make the assumption that CalWORKs would work the same way there than other places. Gotcha. Okay, cool. Thanks.
All right. Thank you so much, Banman. And so our next student is Adrian Howdegi.
Sorry.
Oh, no, it's okay.
1 second. Oh, sorry.
Oh, no.
Okay.
There we go. Looks great. Thank you, Adrian.
Okay. Is it still there?
Yep, looks great.
Okay. Right. It should stay there, right?
Yeah.
Okay. My name is Adrian Howdegi. I'm a 4th-year political science student at UC Davis. My research this summer is particularly topical, but the matter has been a pervasive issue for quite some time, and that is the issue of police violence. I asked this question of my own hometown, Los Angeles. Does the wealth of a police union affect the rates of use of force incidents? I hypothesize the two are directly related. Represented by the Los Angeles Police Protective League, LAPD officers have been long accused of misconduct, most notably in the 1990s during the Rodney King beating. My research analyzes 8 years worth of data from 2010 to 2018. Los Angeles, unlike many other departments, publishes a comprehensive annual report of use of force, likely because it is overseen by the Office of the Inspector General. The authors of these reports make a distinction between many different types of force, but most significantly, I studied categorical and non-categorical use of force. Categorical includes lethal force, use of electrical weapons such as tasers, neck restraints, strikes to the head, any injury that requires hospitalization, whereas non-categorical are any injuries that don't immediately require hospitalization. The data I compiled represents a composite of both categorical and non-categorical incidents, as many vocal critics of the internally verified publication allege many serious, even lethal use of force incidents are omitted or classified as non-categorical. Now, since police unions like the Los Angeles Protective League are often designated as 501c nonprofits. Their tax returns are somewhat easily accessible. So I could analyze the LAPPL revenue, which has remained largely constant at about 12 million over the past decade, whereas asset worth, the value of property like real estate, stock shares, vehicles, has drastically appreciated in the same time. This is likely a result of decades of membership dues being invested in stocks and appreciating. Nonetheless, LAPPL owned 6 million worth of assets in 2010 and 16 million in 2018. But the question is, do these affect officer behavior and use of force? With help of regression analysis, I found that there was little to no meaningful relationship with LAPPL revenue per year, but there was a significantly stronger relationship with LAPPL asset worth per year. With a p-value of 2.9%, I can confidently assert that the null hypothesis is not the case, and the data conforms to a model set by annual asset value. Under the circumstances and the limited breadth and scope of the program, this data loans credible potential to research regarding the causal mechanisms by which police unions affect officer behavior. But what may not be overcome is the lack of uniform or even complete data. My goal during the early stages of this project was to compare several large cities and small cities alike, but few departments use the same definition of use of force, and even fewer have comprehensively recorded use of force statistics before 2016. Before meaningful policy can be recommended to legislators, meaningful data must be collected. If our goal is to prevent tragic deaths of both police officers and civilians, a uniform national definition and categorization scheme must be created, and all use of force incidences must be reported. Federal government oversight, like that of the Inspector General's office, should be encouraged to ensure incidents are properly classified and or audit particular departments. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Adrian. So Adrian interned at the office of Sacramento City Council member Rick Jennings' office. And so I already see 2 hands up, thank you guys. And so Sandra will go ahead and call on you.
Okay, Dennis, you want to ask your question?
Adrian, I have a quick question. Did you look at the capacity of asset and revenue growth into electoral spending, and whether or not the increase in that asset and revenue growth corresponded to larger investments in the political process, and whether that might have any causation?
Yeah, so that's definitely a possible causal mechanism of police union strength and use of force with that relationship. But unfortunately, campaign finance laws are much more liberal, and donations of that sort can be more discreet and hard to find, especially with such a iconoclastic or a controversial issue such as that.
Okay, thanks.
All right, Henry. Go ahead.
Sorry, Henry, also from Councilmember Jennings' office. Adrian, I know you had a section on your poster. It's not shared anymore, but you were talking about why just Los Angeles data. You said that a whole lot of police departments are a lot less forthcoming with the data than the LAPD is. Understanding that it's purely speculative and not holding you to give a completely accurate answer here, but in your opinion, just from the amount of research you've done, if we had that perfect data from every police department, do you think there would be a correlation between a department not being forthcoming with statistics and an increased incidence of use of force?
I don't know if I can give a honest response to that, because I don't want to make a conclusion on data which I don't have. I think there may be a correlation between police departments that keep comprehensive and arduous data, and police departments that experience less use of force because of the diligent paperwork involved. But I can't give a conclusive answer, no.
All right, thank you, Adrian. And so our next student is Rochelle Gabri. Rochelle?
Are you able to see that?
Yeah. You can just do it on the full screen. Yeah, perfect.
Is that good?
Yeah, that's perfect. That's great. Thank you.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Rochelle, and my research is titled Homelessness and Housing Crisis. Homelessness and Housing Crisis, and the high cost of living in California is contributing to homelessness. So prior to COVID, California has been growing in the population, experiencing a boom in the tech industry, and just flourishing economically. However, in recent years, California has been experiencing a rise in prices in housing, and also is increasing in the homelessness of people who are struggling to find affordable housing. So my research is essentially looking at the lack of housing affordability, which is related to the increase in homelessness in California. So some background is that California has the highest number of people experiencing homelessness in the United States. In fact, more than 50% of households pay more than 30% of their income on rent and mortgage, which is frankly unacceptable. No one should be spending more than 30% of their income on rent or mortgage. And I hypothesize that the lack of housing affordability leads to an increasing number of people experiencing homelessness. And during my research, I looked and examined at market rate rent in California cities. I also looked at the number of people who were sheltered and unsheltered in California, and also looked at local minimum wage and housing wage as well. And from my findings, I found that the market rate in California cities has been increasing a lot since 2014, and also the number of people, the total people of experiencing homelessness who were unsheltered in California has also increased as well. So through that finding, I found that there is a significant correlation between the number of people experiencing homelessness due to the fact of the lack of housing affordability and supply. And it's very severe in the most populous and coastal areas such as San Francisco, San Jose, and Los Angeles. And through my research, I recommend that state and local governments should work together to adopt and implement permanent supportive housing for people experiencing homelessness. Also work with developers who are not seeking for profit and working to increase the supply and production of housing. And lastly, also increase the funding and services, to economically uplift people experiencing homelessness in California. And I believe that through these recommendations, we can really solve the homelessness and housing crisis in California. Thank you.
Right, great. Thank you so much, Rochelle. And so this term, Rochelle interned with the Office of Sacramento City Mayor, Darrell Steinberg's office. And so if anyone from the office had a question for Rochelle, you can go ahead and just raise your hand, and Sandra will go ahead and call on you and unmute you.
Hi, Julia, you are now unmuted if you want to introduce yourself and ask your question.
Yes, this is Julia Burrows. I'm the Senior Policy Advisor for Mayor Darrell Steinberg. And my question for Rochelle is, where do you think we should start first? Do you think it's emergency shelter? Do you think it's permanent housing? Where would you go first if you had an unlimited budget to solve this problem?
I would say permanent housing. We really need more permanent housing to support these people who are experiencing homelessness. And through permanent housing, during that process, we should also work to provide employment for people who are experiencing homelessness in efforts to uplift them both economically and socially through that process.
Excellent, very good, thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Rahel. All right, so our next student is Jaime Rivas.
Can everybody see that?
Oh, yep, we see it now, thank you.
All right.
Great.
So, hello and good morning. My name is Jaime Rivas. I am a UC Davis senior graduate this summer studying political science and economics. Now, to initiate with a question, should you vote yes on Prop 25 to implement SB 10? The correct answer should be yes, as SB 10 would abolish the current California cash bail system. But why should Californians vote to abolish bail? Well, firstly, as shown in Figure 1, pretrial detention like cash bail has been the driving force for an ever-increasing jail population within the United States and California. Secondly, bail may violate the Equal Protection Clause by placing undue harm upon defendants that has been argued to result in higher incarceration rates among innocent defendants, as detention leads to loss of job, property, and relationships, pursuing individuals to take plea deals. This brings me to the purpose of my study, which attempts to answer whether pretrial detention by bail results in higher rates of defendants taking plea deals. To answer this question, I compiled data from the United States Sentencing Commission database and statistically analyzed and compared cases with pretrial detention due to bail to cases where the defendant was not detained to see if there was a statistically significant difference in the rate of plea deals taken. The results of this analysis can be seen in Figure 3, where you can see that there is a strong statistical difference as more plea deals are taken by detained individuals. This means that California has a much larger number of cases that are resolved with plea deals, shown in Figure 4, and therefore there is a larger rate of innocent convictions as offenders take plea deals after pretrial detainment to avoid further jail time. Therefore, it is my recommendation for Californians to vote yes on Prop 25 and for legislators to remove an unjust bail system. Furthermore, I recommend that Californian legislators to implement technological and systematic tools such as court date reminders to reduce the need for risk assessment testing for only the most severe cases, as risk assessment tests have shown that they have their own sets of issues and biases. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Jaime. And so Jaime this term interned for the Office of Sacramento City Mayor Darrell Steinberg's office. And if there are any questions from his internship host site.
Julia, go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, this is Julia Burrows again in Mayor Steinberg's office. And Jaime, as part of the campaign, the election campaign, what would be the story that you would tell, the simple story to Californians on why they would vote yes? What is the 30-second or 15-second commercial?
The way I would try to advertise this to the Californian people would be by especially specifying how much it affects lower income individuals, especially in California, which has such a large amount of people who take plea deals in their cases. It really does affect lower income individuals because they don't have the amount of resources available to them to be able to handle some of the harms that are given from pretrial detainment, such as I said about property loss, unemployment. These all lead to things that make it so that these individuals no longer have a life to return to once they are out of jail, even if they're convicted guilty or not. Therefore, there's no reason for them to not take a plea deal, as the risk is just too great.
Very good. Thank you. Great work.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Jaime. All right. And so our next student is Tenzin Yudin.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Hi, Tenzin. We can't hear you, but you just need to go ahead and do your presentation on play or start from beginning of slideshow. Perfect. Great. Thank you.
Hello, good morning, everyone. My name is Tenzin Yudin. I decided to do my research on police abolition and specifically what Californians feel about it.
And so in the wake of George Floyd's death in Minnesota, protesters have called on lawmakers to defund and dismantle the police. And an Ipsos finding suggests that the majority of Americans did not support defunding nor dismantling the police, or there's a small percentage of Americans that do support. But as of now, there's no data on Californians' opinions on the matter. So my research objective was to identify and compare Californians' opinions on a variety of topics within the Black Lives Matter movement in select counties between race and age. And for this study, I specifically focused on the data I received in regards to their opinions on police abolition. So my research question was, do Californians favor police abolition? And I hypothesized that a majority of Californians in largely Democratic-leaning counties, in younger cohorts, and in communities of color will support abolishing the police. So in order to study this, I used an M-TRIC survey, and I gathered 169 responses between folks who lived in different counties, in different races, and in different age cohorts. And through my results, as you can see in figure 1, I observed that 22% of white respondents strongly opposed police abolition, while 12.5% strongly supported abolition. And within the Black respondents, I observed that there was an equal percentage of 11% that strongly opposed and supported abolition. However, they somewhat lean towards supporting abolition, 10% higher than somewhat opposed. And this was the case for the Hispanic, Latino, Chicano responses in strongly supporting and strongly opposing. It was an equal percentage. However, there's a 35.4% increase in somewhat support responses over somewhat oppose. And in figure 3, you can see that there's more support for police abolition within the age cohort of 25 to 34, and there's very strong opposition within ages 55 and up. And in figure 2, you can see that the Northern California counties lean more towards opposition, and the Southern Californian counties lean towards support. But to conclude, I've found that most Californians, or Californians in general, equally supported and opposed abolition. However, the Black and Hispanic communities somewhat supported police abolition at a higher percentage than other race respondents. Today, I wouldn't make any policy suggestions, as I believe there really does need to be more research done, as I only gathered 169 responses. And I also feel that there should be more research done on the opinions of the age cohort of 16 to 18, since those ages do play a large role in the protests today.
Great, thank you, Tenzin. And so, so this summer, Tenzin interned with Political Solutions. And so if there's anyone from Political Solutions that had a question, if you can just raise your hand, and Sandra will go ahead and call and unmute you.
Okay, I think we have a question from Sumaya.
Hi, this is Sumaya Nahar with Political Solutions. Not a question, just more of a comment. Just wanted to say great job, Tenzin, on your project. And thank you for being a part of our team. We really enjoyed working with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And then I think we have a question from Kelly. And
hi there, this is Kelly Beckmill of Political Solution. Thanks, Tenzin, for all your great work with your internship. We really appreciate it. I do have a question on your results, which I thought was a fantastic and interesting study. Why do you, what do you equate for the differences between Northern California and Southern California in the results?
Honestly, I don't think there is a direct reason. I think it could be because maybe there were more respondents in Southern California, whereas in Northern California, there were very few respondents per county. And so that's why I believe there definitely needs to be more research done. Yeah, thank you. And thank you too for coming as well.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Tenzin.